The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana.
Mr. President, I congratulate you warmly on your assumption of office as President of the General Assembly, the Assembly of Humanity, and wish you well in the management of our affairs. I congratulate also the Secretary General on his unanimous re-election for a second term. The common agenda that he has outlined provides us with a powerful framework within which to tackle effectively global issues in these first decades of the 21st century. Back in 2017, when I made my first appearance at the General Assembly as the newly elected President of Ghana, I said neither Ghana nor Africa wanted to be scars on anybody's conscience. I said we want to build economies that are not dependent on charity and handouts, because long and bitter experiences have taught us that no matter how generous the charity, we would remain poor. Between 2017 to 2020, Ghana recorded an average growth rate of 7%, amongst the highest in the world. In 2020, when the global economy in sub-Saharan Africa has contracted by 3.5% and 2.1% respectively, Ghana was one of the few countries that produced a positive growth rate. This is a testament to our determination to build a Ghana beyond aid. 1 year on, although infection rates and deaths are relatively lower in the region, the virus's impact on economies and livelihoods has been damaging. The presence here in New York of 102 leaders of nations in this 76th session tells us of our resolve to return the world to normalcy. We're not there yet, but we're making considerable progress. 1 year on, although infection rates and deaths are relatively lower in the region, the virus's impact on economies and livelihoods has been damaging. The latest numbers from the African Development Bank indicate that African economies, which contracted by 2.1% in 2020, are yet to return to pre-pandemic levels. More than 30 million Africans fell into extreme poverty in 2020, and nearly 40 million could do so in 2021. The social impact has been devastating. Over 103 million African jobs have been lost. Women, who account for 40% of total employment, have been most hard hit. Mr. President, we're listening to the scientists. It is evident that vaccination is the way to protect populations and revitalize societies. To vaccinate 70% in the shortest possible time, as is being done elsewhere in the world, means some 900 million Africans have to be vaccinated. Africa Vaccine Acquisition Task Force $2 billion acquisition of 400 million Johnson & Johnson vaccines is part of the historic African Union's COVID-19 vaccine development and access strategy. It is a critical milestone in our collective fight against the pandemic, in a continent suffering the worst brunt of vaccine nationalism. The Africa Vaccine Acquisition Task Force vaccine program, partly manufactured in South Africa, is the single largest and most far-reaching trade transaction since the entry into force of the African Continental Free Trade Area in January this year. It is eloquent testimony to the benefits of domestic production and pooled procurement in Africa, as envisaged by the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Ghana agrees with the call of the Rome Declaration of Global Health for voluntary licensing and technology transfers to boost vaccine production. The African Union is working with WHO, WTO, and other global partners to expand its vaccine manufacturing and deployment. We in Ghana have so far received 5 million doses, which have been administered to frontline health workers and those classified as being most at risk. 5 million is not a figure to be sneered at, particularly when we consider the situation in many other African countries. We're grateful that our efforts in the management of the pandemic and vaccine distribution have been recognized, and we have received these amounts so far. We're still hoping to vaccinate 20 million of our people by the end of the year. One unfortunate development appears to be the recent measures on entry into some countries in Europe, which suggests that Covishield, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine manufactured in India, is not recognized by these countries. What is intriguing is the fact that this vaccine was donated to African countries through the COVAX facility. The use of vaccines as a tool for immigration control will be a truly retrogressive step. Mr. President, the last time there was such an upheaval in the world was during the Second World War, which led to the establishment of a new world order. This organization, the United Nations, and the other Bretton Woods institutions were created to maintain international peace and security, help rebuild the shattered post-war economy, and promote global economic cooperation. Even before the pandemic outbreak, many had concluded that the current structure of global economic cooperation, designed some 77 years ago, has proven inadequate to finance infrastructure and economic transformation in developing countries. Given the incapacity of the global financial system to produce the necessary outcomes to finance sustainable development, we need a constructive review. COVID-19 provides a great chance to rethink global economic cooperation based on the principles of mutuality, equity, sustainability, and collective prosperity envisaged by the SDGs. There is no question but that if the famous gathering in San Francisco was to take place today, it would be a significantly different United Nations Charter that would be written. In much the same way, a World Bank or IMF or WHO that is born today would be radically different institutions from those that were set up after the World War, as many of the countries in today's world, especially in Africa and the Caribbean, were not present in San Francisco. The pandemic has also shown us that the great advances in science and technology notwithstanding, we still have a lot to learn and discover about the human body and about life. Thus far, in spite of the grisly predictions of dead bodies littering the streets of Africa, and in spite of not having as much access to vaccine as the developed world, Africa seems mercifully to have escaped the worst of the COVID death rates, and for that, we thank God. Ghana wants to share a few thoughts which we believe should form the basis for the new global cooperation. Firstly, we need to strengthen the funding of the existing global health organizations. This must include a greater, more predictable base of multilateral funding for WHO and regional centers of disease controls, which play the central roles in global health security. It will require dedicating an additional 1% of GDP to funding global health. This is an investment in a global public aid goal, not aid. Secondly, we must develop more resilient finances to build back better and for future preparedness. Across the African continent, revenues have decreased by as much as 150 billion United States dollars, as economies are still reeling from the economic impact of the pandemic. African governments have already spent scarce reserves fighting the pandemic and providing social protection to millions of affected households. Ghana has been advocating that innovative financing must also address structural challenges beyond responding to immediate fiscal needs by providing mechanisms to facilitate investments in health infrastructure, technology, the environment, and people that would bolster resilience and equitable recovery. The IMF's unprecedented $650 billion United States SDR allocation offers a unique opportunity to provide additional financial resources to address the vast and surging inequities the pandemic has revealed and a crisis to come. Africa's allocation is some 33 billion United States dollars. If ever there was a time for an African Marshall Plan, it is now. The SDR infusion should be seized upon as a catalytic effort to leapfrog Africa to the next level of human development and ensure sustained global prosperity. African leaders have advocated for a prudent and transparent channeling of 25 to 35% of SDRs, that is $160 to $230 billion, from wealthier to vulnerable countries, $100 billion of which should be dedicated to Africa. We welcome the support of the European countries represented at the Africa Summit in France, the IMF, the G7 and G20 to some SDR redistribution. Mr. President, proceeds of channeled SDRs should fund vaccine acquisition and manufacturing, climate and green investments, and a Pan-African stability mechanism, like the European Stability Mechanism, that will safeguard financial stability on the continent. A part of the redistribution should also help fund the recapitalization of the African Development Bank and Afri-Exim Bank to support industrialization, private sector job creation, and the African Continental Free Trade Initiative. Thirdly, we must reposition key multilateral organizations and international financial institutions such as the United Nations, the other Bretton Woods institutions, and the G20 to reflect inclusiveness, support country investments in global public goods, and ensure fast-track financial support to build back better and prepare for future pandemics. For instance, the key to the G20's effectiveness is that it achieves representative coverage of the global population and economy with a diversified enough number of leaders at the table to enable speed and flexibility in deliberation and decision-making. Admitting the African Union to an expanded G21 would have the same galvanizing effect within Africa that the EU's participation in the G20 has within Europe, strengthening policy coordination and coherence across the 54 African economies. With the African Union at the table, the group suddenly would have representation for 54 more countries, 1.3 billion more people, and 2.3 trillion more output. This extraordinary increase in representation will add just one seat to the table and about 10 minutes to the discussion. However, it will redefine global policy coordination to enable a more prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable world to emerge. Fourthly, we in Africa are as committed as any to the fight against climate change. We believe, however, that the fight is better advanced if we're able to maintain the crucial balance between economic, political, and environmental imperatives, positions that we will be articulating in Glasgow at the COP26 conference, which should form part of the new Global Compact. Lastly, now more than ever, we must defend democracy, constitutional rule, and human rights in the world. In the last 24 months, we've witnessed assaults on democracy around the world, sometimes even in developed countries where we had assumed that a consensus on the democratic form of governance had been established. Mr. President, in West Africa, recent events in Mali and Guinea have undermined democratic governance in our region. ECOWAS, the regional body whose authority I have the honor to be the current chair, is unreservedly committed to maintaining democratic governance in the ECOWAS community. That is why both Guinea and Mali, foundation members of the community, have been suspended from its organization pending the restoration of democratic governance. We welcome the support of the United Nations for the measures taken. ECOWAS has given Guinea 6 months to do so and requested the immediate release of President Alpha Condé. On my visit to Conakry last Friday, the military leaders indicated their willingness to see to his imminent release, and it is our hope that they will keep to their word. The authority has also made it clear to the military government in Mali that it is not prepared to negotiate an extension to the February deadline for the holding of democratic elections, as the essential steps to be taken can, with political will, be effected within the ECOWAS-sanctioned timetable. It is better that a government with a democratic mandate be in place as soon as possible to implement the necessary reforms for the future stability and growth of Mali, thereby enhancing capacity for the all-important fight against terrorism in Mali and in the wider Sahel. We in Ghana highly resolve that we will continue to defend democracy and constitutional rule and uphold human rights. We shall work to strengthen the institutions that support democracy in our country and in our region. We shall continue to support the United Nations and other international organizations to help remind us that indeed, no man is an island entire of itself. I thank you for your attention.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Ghana for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort his